Meet Ryan McClellan. He's a natural physique pro and national bench press champion from Canada. It is possible to look like a bodybuilder and have the strength of a powerlifter. Learn how to work out every single day and become the strongest version of yourself. So, what do people get wrong about mixing powerlifting and bodybuilding?
I think a lot of people incorrectly assume that the two don't go together. We have this psychological tendency to be very tribalistic and that we need to pick one or the other. But in reality, they benefit one another. And the things you work on in one specific side benefit the other side. For example, if I'm training my powerlifting technique and I'm trying to program and periodize specific exercises, that same strategy can be applied to bodybuilding movements, which can further enhance your ability to grow muscle. And on the other end, if I train my body evenly because I'm trying to build a nice physique, this creates a lot of balance across my body and allows me to train and potentially not get as injured because my body isn't hyper specific or hyper focused on specific exercises. And this has allowed me to excel in both, really. And it also gives me a lot to look forward to in the gym, just having multiple different goals.
I think the struggle most people face is the combination of two and managing that within a workout or within a training program itself. Do you have any advice for structuring this?
Yeah, it really comes down to experimentation. Myself, I've landed at a 7-day split because this was the best way I found to balance recovery and effort on my powerlifting movements. If I was trying to squat, bench, deadlift multiple times a week, I'm going to be experiencing a lot of fatigue. But if I could hit each of those movements once or twice a week instead and focus on bodybuilding movements around those movements, I could find a better balance with recovery. So it really is individual, and it does come down to your goals. It does come down to how much you can tolerate as a lifter, because people are going to be able to recover better or worse depending on maybe their leverages or how much muscular damage they experience. But the only real way to find out is to experiment and try.
I'd love you to walk us through that 7-day split, because there's people listening that are thinking, wow, no recovery day. This is blasphemous. It's impossible. You're going to overtrain, get fatigued. It's not quote unquote optimal. What do you say to that? And what are your recommendations for the 7-day split in terms of structure?
So I think the bro split style is perfect for this. Because I hit a muscle group once a week, I can fully recover by the time I get around to the session the next week. And there is a little bit of carryover fatigue depending on the day. The days I experience the most carryover fatigue would be the lower body days and my lower back, because my lower back experiences a lot of fatigue from both my squats and my deadlifts. But it really comes down to the structure of the week. In my case, I'll hit shoulders on Monday, I'll hit my squats and my quads on Tuesday, I'll hit my arms on Wednesday, I'll hit my abs on Thursday, I'll hit my deadlifts, my glutes, my hamstrings on Friday, I'll hit my bench press on Saturday and my chest, and I'll hit my upper back on Sunday. And because of that layout, there's very little interference between the days, and that allows me to push really hard and recover while I train other muscles in the meantime. I believe this would be a lot harder to pull off if you're hitting muscle groups twice a week, or again, you're squatting, benching, deadlifting multiple times a week, because you just don't get that same recovery. But this does force you to place more emphasis on the days you do squat, bench, or deadlift, because you're not doing it as frequently. You really want to be present and focused on those lifts because you're not doing them as often, so that you're still getting as much as you can out of these lifts. And what I found is, because I hit it once a week, it allows me to train at higher intensities and then still recover, rather than training at lower intensities and trying to balance that across the week, which I find is just a lot harder to manage.
I like it. It's simple, it's basic, it's effective. It's enough time between the actual workouts for you to make some meaningful progress on those big compound lifts, because especially as you get more advanced, your tonnage that you're lifting is so much more compared to, say, being a beginner to intermediate who probably could get away with deadlifting a couple times a week or benching a couple times a week. But if you were to do that split where you're doing those powerlifting lifts multiple times a week, really heavy, you would likely run into issues of progression after a few weeks, I imagine.
Exactly that. And even the way I see it is when I'm training my arms, I'm still training my bench press. When I'm training my shoulders, I'm still training my bench press because I'm enhancing my muscle group's ability to contribute to that lift. And it's also contributing to the balance, the bulletproofing of each joint. And it ensures I can lift without pain because contrary to popular belief, I lift heavy 7 days a week, but I have zero joint pain right now. I've solved all my joint pain because of the attention I'm able to give to each muscle group. And each muscle group is capable of so many different movements, so many different types of tension. I mean, I include calisthenics as well. Let's get some isometrics in the form of a front lever. Let's get some isometrics in the form of a planche. Those things benefit your other lifts because it's a different stimulus for the body. Even getting in exercises on the rings, ring dips, and making my chest stabilize, it just makes the adaptations more thorough and pays off in ways, you don't necessarily expect.
That's why you're on the podcast today, Ryan, because you're including some of that sweet calisthenics movements amidst everything else you're doing. And it's very refreshing to hear you say that about being functional by isolating movements. I think there's been a real paradigm shift in fitness where it's going beyond just doing squats to be functional. If you target your hamstrings, that's also functional because it'll help you squat in some way through the antagonist contraction through the movement. And, doing your quads will help you be more upright so you can do a high bar squat. Well, that's the shift that's been happening with functionality in fitness. In terms of running into exercise selection, how does this play a part in your specific split as well? Are you doing a ton of exercises because you're only hitting it 1 day a week? What does it look like?
Yeah, so I'm typically hitting maybe 7 to 8 exercises, maybe less right now because I'm in powerlifting prep. But I'll probably hit 7 to 8 exercises, sometimes 10. It depends. But I'm really trying to hit every movement a muscle can perform, I'm trying to hit and progress in some way. And I have a set of prioritized exercises, like obviously the powerlifting movements, calisthenic movements, and I prioritize those at the top of my work or at the front of my workout. And so I expend all of my energy on those exercises. And then whatever I have left, I tend to drop down into my bodybuilding movements. And then at the end, I'll prioritize movements related to mobility, where I put a muscle through a full stretch, but the stretches are loaded. So I found a really nice balance and a really nice structure with this as well, where I can train a muscle just so many different ways. It keeps it very engaging for me too.
Oh, for sure. And that's a good way to get a blend of all worlds in terms of strength, muscle mass, range of motion by integrating it in that fashion. And I'd say this is in line with your being a strength generalist philosophy. Can you explain what this means and why you embody this style of fitness?
Yeah, a lot of people prioritize maybe their favorite movements or they'll prioritize powerlifting or a certain look. But in my eyes, when you get down to the core of it, I'm really just trying to make each individual muscle as strong as possible. I'm trying to progress every movement it is capable in some way, shape, or form. I'm trying to introduce range of motion and load weight to that range of motion because I know all these things will benefit those movements. They'll benefit my powerlifting movements. And the benefit could be indirect. Maybe it allows me to train more injury-free over a longer period of time, which will do more for my bench press than, say, benching an extra time a week, which is an extra time commitment to the bench press, which takes away from another muscle group, which may create more of an imbalance. So it's a very well-rounded way, I find, to train, and it makes it a lot more simple, I guess. It doesn't need to be very complex. It's just like each muscle, I'm just trying to get strong. It's
worth highlighting that as you have trained for more and more years, the neurological component of strength is important. You've got to do the lift to get better at the lift. Heavy, low rep ranges, the specificity really comes into play. But it seems as if you're trying to tap out your muscular potential to make each individual muscle as big as possible so that you can translate that to the movements that are important to you.
Exactly. That is a great summary. Of it.
Just with the 7-day split, what do you say about, the research for building muscle naturally, a split that has maybe a 2 to 3 times frequency per muscle group per week? How does that compare to your 7-day split where you're only hitting it once a week? Is it relating to the volume? Like, are you doing as much volume in one session as the recommendation is for 2?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what's happening. I end up hitting my one muscle just as hard as they're hitting them across 2 or 3 different workouts. And this allows me to standardize for that recovery a lot better. Like I have tried that, but I don't like holding back in workouts. I don't like having to be like, oh, well, I have to worry about my back workout later in the week. So I have to kind of tread a little bit carefully, and then you tread a little carefully and you're still sore and you can't get the most out of that next workout. It's like, I would rather just go all in on my one day to completely deplete myself and know I'm giving myself ample time to recover, because by the time the next week rolls around, my performance is still good. I'm still able to maintain a good level of strength. But yeah, like you can definitely pull it off with 2 to 3 times a week, but I think it would be a lot more complicated to manage those variables, especially when you're getting to my level of progression. And this is where it gets challenging with recommendations from studies for myself, because I'm no longer I'm an outlier now. So I kind of need to tread my own, or find my own path and really experiment to see what works for me, because those general recommendations aren't going to work. And I've noticed that after a certain point, it was like, okay, this isn't working. I'm going to need to just try new things. And yeah, this is kind of where I've landed after all of that experimentation.
Let's expand on that, because you made a fantastic social media post where you said you're an outlier. You're, was it an anomaly, an abomination in fitness? Because you do a lot of the things in your day-to-day practice that maybe aren't the consensus in the community. What does that look like? What are you doing that what are you doing that's at odds with the general recommendations?
Right now, I'm training at a very low body fat percentage. I'd estimate around 7-8% maybe. And I'm competing in a powerlifting meet this Saturday. So there's that. And then I'm also combining three modalities together: bodybuilding, powerlifting, calisthenics. And then I got like some mobility stuff like that, functional training stuff in there as well. And I'm making it all work because I'm progressing across all three simultaneously. And then I'm also a pro natural bodybuilder. I'm a national bench press champion, and I'm both simultaneously. So I'm making those things happen at the same time. And again, due to specialization or people's, I guess, belief that you need to specialize, a lot of people don't see these things as possible. They see me as some sort of genetic outlier. When in my eyes, I just tried a lot of different things and kept an open mind and slowly built the structure of my program over time, kept pushing myself, and learned that these things are in fact possible.
That's a fantastic positive message that we need to drill into people's heads, because if you go too deep into the scientific literature and the evidence, it almost caps yourself in your mind. Oh, maybe I shouldn't push this hard. Maybe I should limit how much work I'm doing. This is why these chats with people like yourself, Ryan, who've been training for more than a decade. How many years now?
12, it'll be 13 in a few months now. Yeah.
There you go. And it just shows that consistency, dedication, hard work, a mindset of what is the maximum that I can achieve with my body, not is what is the most that I should do. That shift in mindset is something that we should all embody, because I think there's nothing really to gain from being pessimistic with, oh, I can only do this much. You need to obviously build up to this over time, but it's just this empowering self-belief that you should have every day, I think is such a key mindset to approach your training with.
I 100% agree. It's borderline delusional, really. Like the
it
things I aspire
Yep.
for are borderline delusional, but then after enough effort, these things become more and more realistic. It's like, wait, what's happening here? Like, for example, I mean, I'm trying to compete at a high level in bench press. I would like to win a world championship. Is it realistic? No, I don't think so. I think it's possible, but I think it's a very low likelihood that I'll be able to pull it off. I'm just competing with people who are built better than me, people who have more experience. And no matter how well I train, even if I cap out my potential, I may still never get it. But if I let that demotivate me, I train in a way where I'm no longer progressing, and that blocks off a lot of opportunities for me as well. Like, my bench press wouldn't have blown up on social media if I wasn't continuing to train like I wanted to win a world championship, you know? So you kind of got to be delusional in that regard, and it's totally fine to be delusional if it's kind of moving you forward. Hopefully, I mean, there are probably more productive delusions than others, but I mean, that's really the way I see it.
Yeah, it's this delicate balance of being ambitious, but also restraint in a way to play the long game. Because as a beginner, intermediate, you're going to progress in a matter of weeks and months. But as you get more advanced, that time period is going to extend. So you should still have this internal drive to train like a beast, but it's expectations you should have that it'll take longer. You shouldn't get dejected like, oh, I've hit the peak, that's it. You've just got to be changing your time horizon for how long things take to build 500 grams of muscle or add a few kilos to your PB.
Yeah. The way I like describing this is you want to be like patiently impatient. You want to do everything you can in the moment to progress you, but understand that these things take time. You're not going to blink and it's going to happen. Well, sometimes I'm sure we look back at our journey and we blinked. It's like, oh, wow, like that went by really quick. But yeah, we need to understand that these things take time. We're going to encounter speed bumps and we're going to need to address pain, issues, injuries, periods of low motivation. Life circumstances are going to happen to us and we're going to need to gradually work around those things. And as long as we stay, consistent, we'll be able to work around it. And we'll look back and we'll be like, I'm glad I stuck with it.
Another thing you do that's unconventional with regard to nutrition is 1 meal a day, OMAD. What is the reason that you've been following this?
So I usually do OMAD to prep me for a bodybuilding show. It's just a lot easier for me to eat less calories and restrict it to a meal rather than eat multiple meals where there's a lot of potential for me to overeat during those multiple meals. So I like the simplicity of it. I get it done. This is my one meal. I get to eat more. I get to feel full and I get to move on with my day. But this was my first year where I actually considered and am doing it for the rest of the year, just out of curiosity, but also because they moved powerlifting nationals to the end of the year, which interferes with my bodybuilding season. So I was thinking, well, do I need to choose? And yeah, I mean, I'm sure from what you can tell right now, of course, I'm going to try to do both. So I was like, how do I do both? Well, I just got to be leaner, I guess. Let's try to pull this off. And I had just been coming out of a bodybuilding prep where my social media started taking off and I started gaining some weight. And my videos, the performance wasn't doing as well either. So I'm like, that's interesting. But I was like, you know what? Let's try this. I usually feel pretty good upon the initiation of my prep anyways. It's usually those like low, like closer to the show where I start feeling it hit me. But in that period before, it's like maybe I can find a way to make this sustainable for myself. Everyone goes into a cut thinking it's not sustainable. This is only temporary. You got to get back up no matter what. But I was thinking, what if I approach this in a way where I can make this sustainable. I can make this possible for myself. So I approached it with that mindset. So I started with 1 meal a day. And because I eat 1 meal a day, I can eat more food. So if there's something I'd like to eat, whether that's a burger and fries, I can still eat that. It's within my 1 meal. It keeps me in my calories and it keeps me at that body weight I want. So it has a little bit more of that sustainability aspect. And I've also found this experience to just be a lot more seamless. I eat 1 meal. It leaves me more time to be productive, to make content, to work on my community. And I'm just thinking about food less often because I already had my meal. It's like I don't need to worry about what's in the pantry or even worry about potentially getting food coma and that taking energy out of my day and not being able to focus as a result. So there are those benefits. And then I also found that I'm experiencing better recovery as a result as well. And there's a lot of theories on this. One of them is because maybe I'm digesting less throughout the day. My body can devote more to recovery. There are potential other factors, but when I was eating more calories the last couple of years, I'd get 1 good bench session maybe every 3-4 weeks. Now I can maintain a good 5, 6, 7 bench sessions before I have a bad one. And I was like, this is really interesting. And it's not like I'm not as weak anymore because my strength has now caught up to where I was when I was not 10 kilos, but maybe 8 kilos heavier. So yeah, you kind of cut off this experience thinking, oh, this is going to be hard, but then you try it and it isn't as bad as you think and comes with another host of benefits. So
your approach to training and nutrition are pretty similar. You're doing a 7-day split where you're doing a total volume of work that would be spread across multiple sessions for the average person doing what you do. Your amount of nutrition that you're getting in 1 meal is the equivalent of what you're getting across a whole day. And this highlights, given your performance world-class, given your physique world-class, that it's what you do longer term which is important. And it's not sweating these details as much about
100%.
meal timing, frequency, the workout split with how many times per week. It's what are you doing in total? That's such a good takeaway that you gave us.
Exactly. Yeah, we do get focused on the minutia and trying to optimize every possible variable. But the things that are working might be working for completely different reasons. Like we don't know. There's so many variables at play, even when it comes to our psychology and our belief system. Like going into a cut and expecting yourself to get weaker, you're going to start training a little bit lighter, high reps, and maybe that's doing more damage to your strength than the cut is. And in my own personal experience, and even taking clients through cuts, if I can monitor and keep the weights heavy, they end up progressing all the same. And I'm sure they're putting on muscle. They're putting on muscle as well. So yeah, I think we really need to manage our expectations too, and just go into things with an open mind. I was like, I don't know, this 1 meal a day thing might not work. I might be losing muscle. I might be getting weaker, but in fact, now the opposite's happening. So interesting. But yeah, there are a lot of maybe smaller things that occur even mentally for me. Like hunger, I have a different experience of hunger than other people because I've dieted myself down to a bodybuilding show. So it's not as painful for me. It's just a sensation. So it makes it a lot easier for me to stick to a diet than someone else who, this is some of the most intense pain they've experienced throughout the day. So I gotta eat.
Your optimism is awesome to hear, but with the truth being told, being lean, being on lower calories is harder. How do you manage your intensity and effort in the gym, being in this leaner, some would say like more depleted state?
So that's the thing I was confused by for the longest time, especially all of my preps up until this past year was, I'm leaner, I'm more at risk, I'm going to get injured, I'm not going to load the weight, I'll just stick in the high rep ranges. But last year I was like, screw it, let's try it. Let's keep things heavy the entire way through. If I get hurt, I get hurt. If not, I have very valuable data. So I kept things heavy and I maintained my 4-plate bench up until stage weight. Of course, it dropped from closer to 200 kilos to 187, but I still maintained that. So it made me think, like, maybe I'm not as risk as I think, but also there are so many other variables that I kind of get right as well with regards to my joint training and stuff like that, where I can place a lot of confidence in my well-roundedness, and which allows me to push. But I haven't found that being leaner has affected my injury risk. I've actually found the opposite. My joints feel the best now. And in that brief period where I was gaining weight right after my bodybuilding show this past year, I started feeling more aches and strains and weird things in that period than I was all of prep. And then I started this 1 meal thing. And of course, I'll experience small strains here and there, nothing serious. But yeah, my joints feel amazing. And I don't know whether that's because I reduced maybe inflammatory foods or foods that my body was rejecting, or whether just having 1 meal is, it has a different effect that I don't quite understand. But yeah, I haven't found that to be the case at all. I've still been able to maintain a training intensity. I've still been able to progress. And I'd say my progress was better than the last 2 years when I was eating nearly double the calories.
Once again, it appears like you're constraining variables, simplifying it, and just not having as much variability in your day-to-day with meal timing, massive fluctuations in body weight, water retention in there. There's so many factors that could be contributing to this. I'd like to think that your level of advancement as well, and sticking within a range of intensity with your weight lifted, is a contributing factor to your longevity. I don't want people to hear this and be like, yeah, he's just training hard, he's putting on an extra 15 kilos on his lifts every session. We wish that could happen, but that ability of having things with your load tolerance allows you to bulletproof yourself, be robust, and mitigate injury risk too.
Exactly. And yeah, I wonder if it's even a different stimulus, just being leaner and not having as much mass on your body, if that's a different stimulus for the muscle. And I mean, typically when you are bigger, you are lifting more weight, and there's more weight on your body, and there's more load on your joints technically. So maybe being leaner has a benefit from that point of view as well. But yeah, to think we can properly account for all the variables and say, it's this one thing definitively. No, it's a collection of everything, and this maybe slightly modifies it. Like, who knows? We could do our best to track it, and we do want to do our best to track it and pay attention to these things, but ultimately we probably are never going to know what is the main, driving factor for these things.
Yes.
What are the most important variables that you do track to get yourself motivated?
I find that my motivation does ebb and flow, but I have kind of cornered myself into a position where I need to perform. I'm constantly competing throughout the year. First half of the year is usually powerlifting. Second half of the year is bodybuilding. So if my training isn't, up to standard, I'll embarrass myself. And now that I'm filming social media content, now there's lots of eyes on me, there's expectations, and there's pressure. There's pressure on me to perform. And at first I didn't think I'd be able to handle it, but actually I kind of think I'm enjoying it. This forces me to step my game up. This forces me to think more about my workouts and do my best to optimize even more. So there's that pressure component, but there's also that discipline component as well. And I think this is something that the 7-day split really helps with. Because I work out 7 days a week, it's habitual. I'm just on the way to the gym. I don't even realize I'm on the way to the gym. But I also want to go to the gym because of the way I lay out my program. There's so many different things each workout that I'm looking forward to progressing, whether it's a calisthenic movement, a powerlifting movement, whether it's I got to look at my pump. There's so many things. There's so much positive reinforcement going on in the gym that makes me want to go. And even on days I don't want to, I know I'll feel better if I force myself to go and do my best, even if I can't lift the most amount of weight or hit a PR. And I've went through this more than once over the course of 10 years. It's just I never feel as good when I miss those days as when I go in.
The accountability piece is key for everyone listening because you have it inbuilt with being in the public eye, being a coach, and that keeps you, honest with what you're talking about and being transparent. And it's awesome to see you arguing both sides. I really enjoy your posts where, for example, there's accusations when you've been making some steady gains in the fitness field of, are you on steroids? Are you natural? And you will write yourself counter arguments as to why you might be on steroids. And people that are listening to this, they don't have to have a social media following to benefit from accountability. You can talk to your gym mates and just say, this is what I'm thinking about this topic. Let's dive in deep. Positives, negatives, let's critique it and just level up. I think that's the greatest thing that I've seen from your work is just that ability to try and see both sides and just be as rational as you can be as an emotional human, which is not easy on the internet.
No, it's not. Yeah, it's easy to put up that wall and block people's off and block their opinions off. Oh, you're wrong.
But yeah, you're a hater, you're a criticism. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, a lot of the times I'm benefiting a lot from these comments. I don't know if you saw my handstand video and all the recommendations I got. For some context, I made a handstand video of me struggling on the handstand, which I have just been absolutely struggling on for a year.
Very relatable to everyone.
Opened up the floor. Yeah, I opened up the floor. I was like, please give me tips. And I just got this list of tips I can just follow for the next 5 years, which was beautiful and another cool use of social media. It doesn't need to be something where I'm always teaching. I can learn from other people as well. And there are lots of points that can make me smile, but are also very good criticisms. And if you kind of block everything off, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, you kind of lose out on some things that can potentially help you.
Yeah, it's this tricky balance of taking on board feedback and criticism, but not being so paralyzed where you feel insecure to try new things. It's if there was an answer to this, we wouldn't have this suffering as humans.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, you really need to have a strong self-belief and even in your knowledge, because it's easy to get thrown off as well. Is this person right? So you really have to kind of build yourself up, I think, before you get to a point where you do want to take on social media, because you are going to get this criticism. It's going to be amplified. And you need to have a firm foundation in what you believe in first before you can start, even taking on this mindset to begin with. Because I can completely understand when people don't read their comments. It is a very challenging thing to do. When I was first starting it, I was always nervous. I would save it until the end of the day because I didn't want to ruin my day. I still do that because one wrong comment was like, oh man, that hurt.
It applies in daily life too, when you're chatting to friends, family about something maybe at work or with your hobby, and you get some feedback that's maybe criticism or negative. Picture that on the internet amplified times whatever your following size is.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and people, will find things. It's like, wow, I'd never even considered that about myself.
I didn't even know I had that flaw in my appearance. Well, now I've got another thing to think that's wrong with me.
Well, one thing was people were asking me why I wear my belt so high. I was like, why do I wear my belt so high? So I moved it lower and I hated it. I was like, oh, that's why. That's why I like bracing into my diaphragm a little bit more rather than my stomach. And it's just more comfortable up there for me. But yeah,
I can imagine you driving in the car to the gym, just rethinking everything. Why do I wear my belt?
Yeah. Yeah, my whole universe was brought into question there. That happens actually pretty often, that when people ask questions like that, I'm like, why do this? Because over the years, we make these decisions, and then these decisions become habit, and we just stop thinking about them until they're brought into question in a comment, I guess.
This episode is sponsored by Fitness FAQs. Become a bodyweight beast with our calisthenics workouts. Use the coupon code podcast10 at checkout to save 10% off when shopping at fitnessfaqs.com. Don't miss this discount. Start training smarter and enjoy the gains. Is it possible to build muscle and strength at the same time? I want you to talk us through what you believe is maintenance and still making progress.
Like calorie-wise?
Yeah, like being able to still build tissue and get stronger when you're at maintenance.
So I come from the perspective, if the stimulus on the body is deserving of the outcome you're looking for, whether that is strength or hypertrophy, and in my eyes, the two are married, you will make that progress regardless of caloric intake. Whether you will experience more or less at different caloric intakes will be debated until the end of time, I'm sure. But I think the main focus should be the training when it comes to strength and hypertrophy. Are you placing that stimulus, that progressive overload on your muscle to be deserving of this progress? And I think that's what a lot of people miss. They might go to the gym, hit the rep range that they're looking for, and eat because they think the eating is growing. And when in reality, it's the training which is being fueled by what you're eating. But if you improve the training, that's really going to be what takes your progress to the next level. And as far as maintenance goes, this one's really tricky, because thinking about it, technically right now I'm at maintenance, but I could be at a surplus if I ate slightly more. But when I was 200 pounds, my maintenance was higher. And if I wanted to include a surplus or bulk, then that would be more calories. So at which caloric value is the surplus here? Because we're just supporting different levels of body fat. And so I think we really... Yeah, it gets really murky for me. And I think calories are a part of the equation, but probably a small part as well. Then we have protein intake, we have our training stimulus, we have recovery, we have sleep. There are so many things. It's hard to say what exactly is causing the progress. So there's a lot of uncertainty there. So with all of this uncertainty, I'd rather just focus on my training and focus on how can I improve my ability to train and get constant feedback that I'm improving, that I'm getting stronger. And what I found, being a strength generalist and just focusing on the progression of each muscle, is when I focus on progression and strength, the muscle grows. I don't need to think about any really extra factors. I mean, not to say they couldn't help, but it just makes it a little more simple and narrows my focus.
I believe you're on something there with the importance of resistance training as one of the primary focuses and primary drivers of muscle tissue and obviously strength. We can just look at an example of elite athletes where their nutrition is absolutely garbage. They're eating junk food constantly. They're not tracking their protein intake. They're just getting calories, but they're training like an absolute savage. And that lays the stimulus, as you said, to build the tissue. If we look at the reverse example, someone's getting a gram per pound of body weight or more, but they're not training hard. They're not going to grow. If they had the perfect nutritional foundation there, and it goes to show the real significance of training really hard. And obviously I gave an extreme example there just to highlight the importance of the training stimulus. The sweet spot is hard training, progressive, consistent, with a well-balanced diet. Shock horror, what a surprise. You're probably getting your notepad out, listening to this like, oh wow, I've never come across that on the internet. But that's what is sustainable and what I recommend as a happy medium.
Yep. I completely agree. And you want to find that sweet spot for yourself with experimentation. Try getting leaner, try heavier, see how you feel objectively without these expectations as well. Because a lot of the times, like you said, like you go in with a bulk, you're expecting yourself to get stronger because you're bulking. But is it the bulk or is it the expectation? If you expect yourself to get stronger on a cut, see what happens. Try it. Just out of curiosity. Maybe that will work out for you too.
Another exciting piece, if you're maintaining a leaner physique while still pushing yourself hard to build muscle and get stronger, is you get that visual feedback. You get the pump, you can see the striations in your physique. Something about that is really motivating compared to being balls deep in a bulk where you can't see any visible difference in your muscles. That's just a side thought for people that have got more of a training age.
Exactly. That confidence does a lot for you. Don't underestimate confidence, and even just wanting to go in the gym as a result of that confidence. Like, yeah, I got this new gym fit and I gotta show that off today in the gym.
Jeez, look at these delts, these triceps are popping. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Life's good.
Yeah. And it saves a bit of time as well, not going either extreme, like a really excessive bulk, because eventually you'll have to strip the fat away if you want to celebrate your physique.
Exactly. And sometimes after the bulk, those bad eating habits stick around. I know a lot of people who've never returned from a bulk, unfortunately. And it is a lot harder. It is a lot more stress. So again, experiment, see if it is possible to maybe maintain a little bit leaner. And if not, all the more reason to go back up and bulk.
I'm glad you did mention that about health, sustainability from a physical and psychological perspective, because in the fitness industry, people are extremes. I'm either bulking or I'm absolutely depleted, cut. This, like 10 to 12%-ish body fat, give or take a little bit, makes you look incredible. And you're likely doing those healthy habits of your nutrition to stay in that range. For me, I don't like yo-yoing with going all the way to a bulk and then getting upset about how my calisthenics performance is or what I look like and then bounce the other way. I'm within the ballpark of what I deem as the physique and strength that I'm satisfied with, and the calories amount reflects the body fat percentage that I'm at. If that makes sense, it's like it wouldn't take much work for me to do a slight surplus or a slight cut to change the desired outcome.
Exactly. And it gives you more versatility, and each body weight will come with different benefits. Like, yeah, you can bulk up, your powerlifting movements will benefit, but yeah, your calisthenics are not so much. Whereas when you go down, all your body weight movements will benefit, but your powerlifting movements may suffer a little bit. But then this gets tricky as well, because if you calculate how much you're lifting per pound of body weight, you might actually be stronger at a lighter body weight. So you might be lifting less absolute weight, but you're actually stronger on paper. So even depending on what you track as your outcome, that can motivate you or discourage you. And I know a lot of powerlifters don't want to cut down to a previous weight class because they're afraid of that. But their Wilks, their IPF points, the value they give you per pound for how much you lift per pound of body weight might actually improve. So, well, yeah, what do you value more, right? And it does come down to that. What are you sacrificing to be leaner? Are you sacrificing some food? Well, how much do you value some mouth pleasure? For me personally, I get to eat what I want, but it's just in smaller amounts, really. But if eating a lot of tasty food is really valuable to you, are you willing to sacrifice maybe some confidence for that? If that's the case, yeah, you have my blessing. Go for it. But be really true with yourself and really understand your drives and why you want to gravitate to a certain body weight. And I think that'll make that decision a lot easier rather than kind of being stuck in the middle ground.
Isn't it fascinating how performance is affected based on your body weight, depending if your goal is lifting weights or calisthenics? Getting leaner is better for calisthenics. Pound for pound strength improves. When you take that to the extreme with lifting weights, your numbers will inevitably go down. Whereas it's reverse progress with calisthenics if you're bulking and you're maintaining your performance or improving, because the exercise is harder because you're heavier.
Yeah, weighted everything without adding the weighted belt.
Do you have any tips for people that are struggling with that, I guess, emotional eating and not being able to constrain themselves when they want to?
Yeah, this is a really complex one, because what I've even noticed in myself is that there are certain periods of the day where you're maybe more volatile to give into certain cravings, and you really need to pay attention to what you're getting out of the meal. Are you eating this meal because you're hoping it will make you feel better? What is the real reason? And I think this takes a deep level of analysis to really understand, because a lot of the times our reward system in our brain is fixated on this food because we know it'll make us feel better, but it'll make us feel better temporarily. Will it solve our issue and make us feel better? Long term, maybe not so much. It's going to maybe move us in the other direction, especially if it contributes to excessive weight gain and lethargy and just less overall energy throughout the day. Yeah, you really want to analyze and become conscious of these eating habits and understand why you're gravitating towards foods during certain periods, and maybe try to come up with fixes for these things. And again, this takes some experimentation too. Pay attention to foods you eat. Do you feel good or do you feel guilty? These are all feedback mechanisms that can allow you to slowly make better decisions over time. And I don't think people should feel pressured to get it right away. This is something I had to develop myself over many years, and you're going to mess up a lot. Even with regards to overcoming hunger, I kind of see it like you're overcoming a rep. Like, okay, stomach's growling. Can I push through? Can I push to failure and get past this? And what you'll realize is the hunger goes away. It's not going to kill you. Maybe your blood sugar is dropping and you need a re-up there, but pay attention to these things. Don't let mindless eating habits dictate what you put into your body. Become really conscious and intentional.
That was a great example. I won't forget that one about the overcoming discomfort of the initial hunger. It's like all the responses that we have in daily life, that urge to go on social media when we should just be present with our family or the moment. And like what you said with the rep and pushing it, I really like that example. What is very helpful as a mindset shift when it comes to nutrition for me personally is not having the I can't have this food mentality. I choose not to have this right now. That is such a powerful mindset shift, because sure, you could have the equivalent calories in some garbage, or you could have a well-balanced meal. That as a mindset for most of the time is very helpful for me. And just reaffirming what you just said about not getting it perfect all the time. I guarantee every fitness person that you follow doesn't eat perfectly 100% of the time. I'm not in that camp for sure. And it's just allowing yourself that freedom is important. Otherwise, you get into very unhealthy habits of binging, and then this vicious cycle where you could just have the standard moderation, non-sexy, give yourself some discretion with enjoying and certain types of foods, but don't overdo it is my practical tip.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, you want to come from a place of empowerment where you are in charge. You can choose to do these things. You can overcome these cravings. You can make better choices over time. And sometimes you need to mess up to make a better choice. And that's bodybuilding prep in a nutshell. Like, people are going to mess up, but how do you come back from the mess up? Do you let it affect you negatively when you're already in this negative mindset and you're depleted? Well, that will derail you completely. So you have to be able to have those tools to kind of get you back up to baseline. And the way, something I like teaching my clients is sometimes messing up can create this overcompensation mechanism where you really try to correct it, and the mess up can end up being a good thing. It's like, okay, I kind of had a lot of ice cream today, but tomorrow I'm going to be on point. The day after that, I'm going to be on point. I'm just going to make something amazing out of this, even though I messed up. So it doesn't end here with the one mess up. There's so many more decisions in the future you're going to make where you can definitely, make up ground.
A few other tactical things that I find are helpful are conscious eating. This is such a game changer. Growing up, I would eat every single meal watching something, watching anime, watching a TV show, and you realize that you're just going through the motions, and you associate the food with the pleasure of both food and also the show that you're watching. If you want to enjoy food, especially if you're going on to a one meal a day or you're trying to get things on lock, sit down, no phone, no TV, eat the meal, put your fork down, chew. It sounds so basic, but it's the equivalent of difficulty of meditation if you've never done it in terms of conscious eating.
I completely agree. And that's something I think one meal really facilitates. Because you have this one meal, you better enjoy it. And that is my experience on prep, because calories are dropping. I'm not having very much. But when I have my protein shake, I am sipping that thing so slow. The slowest sips. And I am enjoying every bit of flavor, which is enhanced because I can't have any calories, and this thing is the sweetest, the sweetest protein I can ever have. So it kind of fulfills that desire for a treat for me. But mindful eating is also so important, because it's so easy to shovel it down. You don't even know what you just ate. Whereas if you slow it down, you're actually eating the food, you're enjoying it, and you're enhancing the experience of this meal. So maybe you don't need to look forward to, more and mindlessly shoving that down your throat when you're not even experiencing the food.
Of course. Motivation, it's something that we all struggle with at certain stages of our training career. What do you recommend for getting motivated to change ourselves?
Knowing that I'm going to experience some sort of issue down the road for not taking action is something that really motivates me. I've kind of broken down my actions into what I would be proud of and what I wouldn't be proud of. And I tried to make the majority of my decisions revolve around the things I'd be proud of. And it is really easy to be excessively hard on yourself as well. And that's something that needs to be managed, because just like eating, just like working out consistently, you're going to mess up a lot. So we need to have the patience and understanding that this is something that can improve with time, but is going to require a little bit of brute force to get you started. You really need to create that activation energy within you to start, especially if you're starting from zero and you're trying to go into something. You really got to push. But once you build that momentum, that's where it comes easy. And that's what you should be aiming for at all times, is how do I build momentum? When it comes to working out, how do I start hitting PRs so I feel good, so I want to go to the gym? How do I follow a program I actually enjoy that gives me lots of things to look forward to in the gym? Or maybe pick a gym where it's there's a nice community and you want to be social and you want to talk to people there. There's so many other reasons you can enjoy, or you can set yourself up to enjoy something you might not want to do at first. And this was even my experience with making content. I procrastinated for so long. And then I finally got around to it, brute forced it, sucked. But after a certain while, I started enjoying this. I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. I get to capture my thoughts. It's kind of like a meditation for me, and I get to convey a lot of my lessons I learned over the 12 years I've had in the gym. And yeah, I never knew the way I train would eventually be the product, or me combining my philosophy with the gym would be possible if I didn't take the step to start and build that momentum.
Seems as if motivation being an issue comes down to a lack of enjoyment too. You see people associating exercise with this big struggle. I've got to go and absolutely kill myself every single workout, doing optimal exercises and optimal workout routines and eating optimal meal frequencies and in a way that I don't enjoy. Go the reverse. Keep it simple. What do you enjoy doing? What can you do? And what can you do consistently? And once you see progress, that is motivation. This intrinsic motivation driver is one of the biggest things. You can supplement it with external validation, with, compliments from others, attention, all this stuff. It's nice, but it shouldn't be the core of what drives motivation.
Exactly that. You need that feedback. And sometimes you got to level with yourself. Sometimes you're not training in a way where you are going to make progress. And it's going to take more out of you to make that progress. But it's always going to be worth the effort. It's always going to be worth trying. And I think we need to recognize it during these periods, because it's very easy to think, oh, nothing's working. Like this sucks. And it kind of tints your perspective and you start thinking that nothing's going well. But you might just need to make some adjustments, which will allow you to kind of step your game up and get that progress and get that feedback that you need to kind of reignite you. And
this is why I stress the importance of combining different fitness methods. Don't be dogmatic to doing just powerlifting or just bodybuilding or just calisthenics, because after some years, I'm just going to be honest with it, your progress will stall. And this is where you see people either give up on the discipline, they decide that, I want to keep getting results, so I'm going to take some PEDs, which is a whole topic in and of itself. But if you have different avenues that you can progress, that you can enjoy, and you can mix things to keep it fun, I think motivation will be less of an issue for people because you've got so much to explore. Strength, muscle mass, lifting weights, lifting your body weight. It's endless. Like, we've been doing this for more than 10 years, both of us, and listen how passionate we are about talking about this. Like, if you embody that yourself and find the fun, you'll find motivation.
Exactly. And again, you got to kind of leave yourself open to that. You got to be willing to try new things. Just because you're a powerlifter doesn't mean you can't implement some calisthenic movements. Just because you're a bodybuilder doesn't mean you can't lift heavy. Be willing to try, because you might find a lot of things you're going to enjoy. And that's what I do see the most, whether it's bodybuilders or powerlifters burning out, is just people who kind of like hit that plateau where they're constantly getting injured, but they keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, when maybe you just need to pivot a little bit and introduce something else that might even balance out and kind of help the issues, or help you blow through that plateau because it's addressing something that you hadn't really considered was causing the issue.
And this is where people need to understand that change is hard. Change is difficult. It's shifting your habits, the way that you've been doing your workouts. And you need to understand that there's going to be that month where it's going to feel awkward. You're going to feel weak, but give it some time and you'll find the enjoyment once you start to feel good in your body and gain some, I guess, awareness in the movements, because it feels awkward doing new things. You know what I mean? I feel that if I try a new exercise, just because I'm strong at doing handstand push-ups doesn't mean it's going to make me automatically really good at a barbell overhead press. It's humbling, but that journey will empower you.
Exactly that.
Ab workouts are something that most people either skip or they put minimal effort into. Can you talk us through why you do a dedicated ab workout every single week?
Yeah, again, it comes down to that strength generalist standpoint. Who am I to train every single muscle except my abs? And there is a lot of information kind of going around worrying about ab thickness and your abs getting too dense or losing that kind of V shape because you're training your obliques. And I think that's warranted, especially if the information is coming from the enhanced bodybuilding realm, where you can train it very lightly and you will put on an excessive amount of muscle mass. But for someone who's natural, I think it's going to be really hard to have your abs kind of come out to here. And
yeah, it's the equivalent of an untrained person saying, "Oh, I'm worried about getting too big." Man, we've been training our whole life to get too big, and we're still not too big in baggy clothes.
falling short hard. Exactly. And yeah, it does come down to my strength generalist standpoint, where I want to train my abs just as hard as the rest of my body. And if I can have them grow, that helps build definition. I always wanted abs like Ryan Terry. I was like, well, I'm not enhanced, so how am I going to do this? I was like, well, what if I train them heavy? And this kind of evolved into this full ab day where I train lots of different movements, which are very exciting for me to progress. And I take a lot of my clients through these ab days, and at first they hate them because the next day they can't laugh because their abs hurt. But after a little bit of time, they're like, you know what? I actually really enjoy these ab workouts because there's tons of progressions. I include the front levers on there. There's tons of hanging exercises that look really cool. We have dragon flags. You can progress from like a toe ab roller. Like, there are so many different things you can look forward to in an ab day. And this benefits my deadlift because now my entire core is strong and it can carry its load. And I think that can be a pretty big risk for injury if your erectors and your lower back are overdeveloped and your abs have nothing to support it with. So I credit my healthy lower back to a lot of my heavy ab training and even my oblique training.
Yeah, it's something that tends to get overlooked because of this whole optimization of exercises in bodybuilding. We've got machines stabilizing us. We rarely have to do any trunk work ourselves. And it's shown how much of a weak link this is when it is tested on a movement if you don't train it. Whereas I could imagine with your dedication to ab workouts, when you're doing a bent over row, you feel fine. When you're doing squats, you can brace really strong throughout the movement.
Exactly. Just small things you don't even notice throughout the day. You don't realize how much you use your core until it's sore, actually. And once you try going about your day with a sore core, you realize, oh, wow, this is actually has a pretty big impact on everything I do. So it wouldn't hurt to have a stronger core. Could it possibly hurt? I don't know. I don't think so.
In terms of monitoring ab exercises, it seems as if in mainstream fitness, there's still some archaicness to how we look at the movements, i.e., train them until you can't do any more. I only start counting when it burns type of mentality. What are you tracking to keep yourself motivated and actually trending upwards with ab workouts?
A lot of the movements I prioritize are the calisthenic movements. So leveling up through progressions is something that really motivates me. On my front lever, I couldn't even really hold it completely straight. So these like micro progressions where I can now hold it like pretty well, pretty close to completely straight and make it aesthetic, point my toes, those give me a lot of motivation to just perfect the movement. And as far as the following movements, I view training abs just like any other muscle. I want to load weight when possible. If I'm doing crunches, I'm holding 2 kettlebells up here, or an easy curl bar or a barbell, I'm holding it in a front rack position and I'm trying to do an ab bench press. Or I'm trying to find ways where I'm loading my obliques and I'm doing my side crunches and I'm really, oh, look at the sweat. And I'm really trying to get a full stretch and I'm trying to progressively overload. And there's so many ways to progress a movement, and even things like I'm trying to add kettlebells to my toes on my dragon flags. So there's if you're creative enough, there's a lot of ways to progress these movements into, to a point where you can be, consistently looking forward to something.
It can get very overwhelming with the number of ab exercises that you can do. It seems just a couple minutes scrolling on social media, finding ab movements, you can get quite like complicated with what you're doing, how you're doing it. Just understanding the main functions of the core and then training those with a movement should help you to overcome this FOMO of, should I maybe do the Copenhagen plank for my obliques there? Or it's like, just pick a movement that trains the muscle and the movement.
Yep, exactly. And find a way to add weight and make it more difficult. Like very, very simple. And try to find different movements for each part of the abs, whether it's crunches, which will kind of bias your upper abs, or leg raises, which will be a little bit more hip flexor and lower abs, and find ways to progress them. And I know a lot of people like to do like a little bit at the end of each workout, but I mean, if it works, but I don't personally find that as fun.
I got a theory. There tends to be a correlation with people's level of body fat percentage. The leaner you are, if you've got exposed abs, they tend to train the abs more than the person that's in a really bulked state.
100%.
Thoughts?
100% confirm this. 100% confirm this. But it's like, how do you know you're not going to cut in the future? You know, the last thing you'd want, and this isn't a guarantee for a lot of people. Like, not everyone gets to cut down and have a well-defined set of abs. Some people might experience more core activation through sports growing up, and they can cut down and they'll have abs. But other people might not have that, and you might actually need to build them up. And better now than later when you're actually cutting and you want to see them, right?
Yeah. What's a slightly depressing part about abs is the genetic shape. You're born with what you got in terms of whether you got a 4-pack, 6-pack, 8-pack, and this might be the calf equivalent of people not training them. I've got pretty bad shape here, so why bother? Whereas the person that has that perfect 6-pack, of course they're going to be doing hanging leg raises until the cows come home.
Yeah, yep, exactly. Yeah, it goes to show how those different motivations can totally determine whether you're training something or not, or whether you have that balance. And that's even something I was frustrated with when I first, because my abs are like kind of offset, and I'm like, is there something I can do to fix it? But unfortunately you got to work with what you got, but a little more definition I don't think hurts anyone.
No. And think of all those juicy functional benefits to your compound lifts, exactly. Moving through daily life. It makes you more robust. So I would recommend doing some ab movements, as you said, at a minimum, at the end of a workout, once or twice a week. Start with that. Keep doing that. Feel the benefits in your body. And if you are on team ab workouts, then by all means do a dedicated workout. It's also good that it's a rest from the other upper body muscles. So you can do this, for example, 7-day split, if one of the days, for example, was abs, if you manage to do it in that way.
Exactly. And I kind of view those, I don't know if I'd consider the ab days. It's actually really hard. But I view a lot of those days as kind of active recovery days, like say a shoulder day or an arm workout. It's less taxing on my whole system when compared to my squat, my deadlift, or my bench day. So at least I can work something, not be hit too hard by the fatigue. I mean, most people are going to get hit pretty hard by the fatigue from abs. But I've always found to recover more when I'm in the gym and I'm just like actively working on something than I do when I actually take days off and I'm a little bit more stagnant. My blood's not flowing as well. So I feel like working out more facilitates recovery in that sense as well.
Definitely. On that note, if people aren't obsessed, passionate, and want to commit to 7 days a week, just walking on your off day is the best recovery that you can possibly do. Continuing with what you said about the blood flow, getting it throughout your whole body just helps so much with the DOMS and recovery between sessions, as opposed to just lying in bed or just sitting at home all day playing video games, which is what I would have done when I was younger. If I just did, 10-minute walks after breakfast, lunch, dinner on a rest day, I would have been so much more recovered.
Exactly. Yeah, there's so many ways to be creative and fit more movement in a way where it isn't as bad as you think it is either.
Yeah, and I say that because the question comes up, what about all the other recovery methods of just low intensity static stretching, foam rolling, ice baths, saunas, all these things, not as effective as sleep and walking. I can say that with 100% confidence in terms of the time, cost, commitment, etc.
Yeah, especially sleep. But I guess we all go through a phase where, I don't need sleep, I'm fine. But then, especially because I really do pay attention to my mental state and periods where I'm definitely more like sharp and functional, just a couple hours is all it takes for me to losing a couple hours of sleep. And I very much dislike that feeling. And if that's what I feel mentally, I can only imagine what's happening to my body as well.
Talk to me about shoulders. You've got some unconventional exercises for comprehensively strengthening the shoulders and making them well-rounded. Can you explain this to us?
Well, this was actually my shoulder training was kind of born out of me experiencing jammed shoulders and impingements from all the benching. And the typical exercises weren't doing the trick for me, like just general external rotation, internal rotation. I was like, I'm still jammed. Like, what's the deal here? So I had to kind of come up with my own way to train them. So I started thinking about it and I was wondering, well, what could I do to stretch out my internal and external rotations? Because this doesn't really do a great job of stretching it. And I'd already included some exercises which utilize weight to force you into a stretch. It's like, okay, how can I do that for external rotation? So I came up with my exercise, which I call the flat shoulder press, where I lay horizontal on a bench. I grab 2 dumbbells and I just use the weight of the dumbbells to just like open me up and crank me open into as much external rotation I can and train myself through an entire range of motion where I open myself up. And I was like, oh, this feels a lot better. And that actually made a lot of that pain go away. So I applied that to my internal rotation where I also lay horizontal and I use the weight to pull me into internal rotation. So I get a full stretch of that movement. So I was like, oh, there's a lot of different undiscovered ways, I guess, to train this joint as well. And by including those, my shoulders, pretty well fixed up. I haven't had any impingement issues ever since I started including those exercises. And it also opened my eyes to more unique ways of training. Like there are a lot of exercises that haven't been done before that you can kind of make up if you find unique angles. Well, I mean, majority of them I'm sure have been established, which helped contribute to joint health and the way I train my shoulders. And a lot of these things, the payoff isn't direct. You don't do these things and your bench press blows up. But if you can mitigate a little bit of pain, that'll allow you to train more intense, longer, and so that really benefits you indirectly. So people shouldn't underestimate that, and really making sure that their shoulder training is, including those movements, and you're getting a full stretch in there. Especially
with the shoulders complexity being a ball and socket joint, it has circumduction, so it can move in a rotational capacity. If you're only ever training forward to back, side to side, the front and sagittal plane of motion, just think simply about how much is missing from how those musculature is working in your rotator cuff and all the other prime movers of the shoulder. So it just allows you to be a little bit safer in the worst case scenario. I can imagine with powerlifting as an example, you don't bench press perfectly all the time. You might misgroove, you're handling a heavier weight than you usually do in regular training. You doing all that stuff into the external and particularly internal just allows you to have a bit more robustness in the joint, in the tendons and the surrounding tissues in there as well.
And you feel it immediately. You'll do a set for the first time and you're like, wow, this feels amazing. And I think it might be a favorite on my program in the community because not too many people have, no one really has done these exercises before. They'll do them. They're like, oh my God, I feel phenomenal. And yeah, you'd think this would be something that would be included in every program because it's so, it feels so good. But it's a good hint. It's a good hint, just that immediate feedback when you loosen up.
And people that are listening are probably thinking, oh yeah, low grade, rehab, prehab style exercises. I can see the value in it, but it's boring AF. I want to build some muscle and some strength. And to those people, I say you can explore range of motion with resistance. And the perfect example for this is a loo raise. So instead of just doing your laterals up to shoulder height, coming down with super heavy weights, another varied stimulus that you can do is the loo raise. You can come up full range of motion all the way up. You're getting that full abduction and adduction of the shoulder joint, stimulating the lateral delts for growth, getting some upper traps. So you're getting big, beefy, and strong. So don't look at these movements as, have to be low grade, especially if you're pain-free and you want to make yourself even more of a beast. Look at them as an actual training exercise that you progress. You ride in your program. Last week I did 3 sets of 15 with 7.5 kilos on the loo raise. Write it down. Keep trying to progress. That gets you motivated.
I agree. And they burn almost more than those than the shoulder presses. All like the big boy exercises. Yeah, you're gonna get humbled by 7.5 kilos on the loo raises. And I started doing those recently myself, and those fire me up too. So I love these small exercises, which humble you but burn so much more. And especially that's also a good piece of feedback I like to use to determine whether I include certain exercises is how much does this mess me up? This messes me up a lot. Okay, this is going to be a higher priority for me for sure.
Yeah, targets the muscles, doesn't really impact your joints. So it's like the best feeling in that respect. And it's so fun to go into the gym, lift these incredibly light weights that are challenging in awkward ranges of motion. In front of the mirror, you're on public display, you're getting the results, and people are probably looking at you that are maybe ignorant to the way that this can actually help you. They're lifting probably double the weight on the same movement, like a standard lateral raise, and you're just like, cool, you do you, bro. I can see the benefits that you'll get from that. It's a good way to train, but that they're probably thinking, man, this guy's got no idea what he's doing.
Yeah. Especially for us with more experience and we have the physiques. I'm sure a lot of people will be like, okay, he probably knows what he's doing. But when I give some of these exercises to some of my clients, they're even more self-conscious because other people will actually like go up to them and like ask them. And they won't know how to explain the benefits of these exercises, just kind of that they're doing them. And that kind of makes it awkward as well. But hey, conversation starter and stuff like that. But even the way I see it as well is you're probably going to need to include these exercises at some point. You're not going to be able to avoid them forever. You're going to build up some tightness. You'll experience an impingement or some pain at some point where you do need to stretch out and introduce this movement in some way, shape, or form. And would you rather do it before or after the injury? I mean, completely up to you, right? I mean, maybe if you're lucky, you can go your entire time without experiencing something like that. But that hasn't been my experience. If I ignore it, an issue will pop up later.
Yeah, and just putting these dinky so-called exercises into perspective allows you to put the effort into them. It's helping my compound lifts. It's keeping me healthy. And then if someone was to come up to you and say, oh, what are you doing this movement for? And maybe they don't have the physique or the strength, have the confidence in yourself to know what it's for. And then just say, this is an accessory to helping me with my main goal, which is doing the bench press, overhead press, deadlifts, all that stuff.
Exactly. And then you could even show them it. And then they could feel it and they'd be like, oh, I'm doing these now. And then next thing you know, everyone in the gym's doing these. Actually, that's one of my favorite phenomenons is me doing these exercises, coming to the gym. And now there's just a set of other people doing them who I never talked to before. But it's like, great. I'm glad everyone's getting healthier shoulders as a result.
What are the small decisions that we make on a day-to-day basis that have a big impact on our long-term progress?
I really think we should be very mindful of these small decisions because these small decisions, when added up over a year, create tidal waves. So when you're in the gym and you're doing a hard set and you stop a rep shy, but you stop a rep shy on 5 different exercises that day, and then you continue that habit for the week. That's a lot of exercises. That's a lot of missed reps that you probably could have hit with a small shift in mindset. So we really want to count how many times we either take the easy way out or we take the harder route, and pay attention to these things, because I think it really comes down to these small decisions in terms of what can determine your progress long term, because we do have these innate mechanisms that want to avoid pain, that want to make it easier, that make it a lot easier for us to not load the weight and not try the PR than it is to actually attempt the PR. But if we keep giving into that voice and we make a habit of giving into that voice, that probably stunts more progress than we give it credit for.
Another one that I feel is very important is controlling the eccentric on the last rep of a set. You do that for every single set of every single exercise, your progress and your transformation, your physique will skyrocket. Because the average person that I see dropping the stack from the machine, pet peeve, by the way, one, it's annoying and loud, but two, you're robbing yourself of progress. But the same thing goes for any free weight exercise, any calisthenics exercise. Control the negative, really dominate it on the way down on the last rep of every set is a big game changer with that small decision approach.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And that's work being done as well. I know a lot of people will drop their deadlifts at the top, but that's a lot of tension and a lot of potential benefit that you're missing out by cutting out half of the lift. And we could count these small decisions for days, but yeah, really analyzing the reasons why we make certain decisions, like why we didn't do this, why we didn't do that exercise, why we decided to skip the last exercise because we were feeling tired. And if we kind of put these all out in front of us, we can kind of see how well the workout really went.
For some closing motivation, can you hit us with your lifetime PRs?
So this is really cool because hopefully this weekend I'll be able to match my numbers, which I hit as a 93 kilo lifter last year. So my squat is the only thing that's a little bit further away, but I haven't tested it like completely yet. So I might be right there or very close. So my all-time best squat PR is, I don't know what this is in kilos. So 227 was my 93, 227 and a half kilos was my best as a 93 kilo lifter. I think I'm closer to 215, maybe 220 right now. My best bench press, which I hit as a 93 kilo lifter, was 200 kilos or 440 pounds, which I just recently hit 2 weeks ago in the lower weight class. So hopefully, if everything goes well, I can hit that in competition. And my best deadlift was 290 kilos, and that was a couple weeks ago. So that matches my all-time best, even as a 93. So my numbers, my all-time bests have shifted down a weight class. So I'm really excited to see if I can replicate that in comp.
Those are some inspirational numbers for us to aspire to as natural lifters. Ryan, that was a pleasure chatting to you, mate. Where can people follow your work?
So if you'd like to check out my Instagram, it's Ryan_McClellan. If you'd like to check out my community, where you'd have access to my 7-day workout split, where I teach you everything you need to know in course format, the website is school.com/oneplategroup.
Perfect, mate. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.